June 4, 1942. Dawn over the Central Pacific. 200 miles north of Midway Atoll, the sea lies deceptively calm, an endless blue plain broken only by the long grey silhouettes of the Imperial Japanese Navy's first air fleet. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu cut through the water in disciplined formation, their wakes white and precise, their decks crowded with aircraft armed for the final blow. The smell of aviation fuel hangs in the air, sharp and oily, mixing with salt spray and engine exhaust. Flight crews move quickly, confidently. This is a fleet that has never truly been hurt. On the bridge of Akagi, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo stands rigid, binoculars raised. Around him, staff officers murmur reports, wind speed, deck readiness, fuel status. They speak in clipped tones, certain of control. Below, deep within the ship's steel hull, hoses, valves, and pumps lie neatly arranged, but few aboard give them much thought. Damage control is necessary, yes, but not decisive. Victory is decided by the first strike, by offense, by annihilation. For decades, Imperial Japanese naval doctrine has been built on this belief. The Kantai Kessen, the decisive fleet battle, demands speed, precision, and overwhelming attack power. Warships are weapons, not fortresses. Armor is weight. Compartments are inconvenient. Fire suppression systems, redundancies, thick internal bulkheads. These are seen as signs of a navy preparing to be hit, not to win. Japanese officers have studied American ship design. They know U.S. carriers are riddled with compartments, layered with redundant systems designed to absorb punishment rather than avoid it. Many dismiss this quietly. Some laugh openly. Why prepare to survive damage when a proper attack prevents damage altogether? On Akagi's hangar deck, armed Nakajima B-5N, Kate torpedo bombers are pushed into position, wings folded, engines ticking as they cool. Fuel lines snake across the deck. Bombs and torpedoes are stacked nearby, their metal casings sweating in the morning heat. The hangar is crowded, efficient but tight. Space is precious. Everything is optimized for launching aircraft as fast as possible. There is no room for error here, and no room for fire. Far to the east, beyond the horizon, American carriers wait. Enterprise, Hornet, Yorktown. Their decks are quieter now. Their aircraft already gone, swallowed by the vastness of the sky. Below their flight decks, the atmosphere is different. Thick steel bulkheads divide machinery spaces into sealed compartments. Damage control lockers are stocked and labeled. Fire mains loop and cross, so that if one line is cut, another can feed the hoses. Crews drill endlessly on procedures they hope never to use. To some Japanese observers before the war, this seemed excessive, even timid. A U.S. carrier, they believed, might survive a hit, but it would still be knocked out of action. Better, surely, to build a ship that cannot be hit at all. The sun, on Akagi's bridge, a message arrives. Enemy aircraft spotted earlier, uncertain composition. Nagumo hesitates. His carriers are in the middle of rearming their strike aircraft, shifting bombs and torpedoes based on incomplete intelligence. It is a delicate ballet of steel, fuel, and explosives, performed deep inside ships never meant to burn. At 10:20 a.m. the sky changes. From high above, tiny black specks appear. American SBD dauntless dive bombers dropping out of the sun. There is no warning siren in time, no evasive maneuver sharp enough. The first bombs fall almost vertically, screaming as they cut through air and clouds. On Akagi, a 1000-pound bomb punches through the flight deck near the aft elevator. It detonates in the upper hangar, exactly where fueled aircraft and armed munitions are clustered. The explosion is not just force, it is ignition. Flames race along spilled fuel. Secondary blasts ripple outward as bombs cook off. Shockwaves tear through the hangar, blowing men off their feet, rupturing lines, snapping cables. Within seconds, the hangar deck becomes an inferno. Fire crews rush forward, but the heat is overwhelming. Smoke billows upward, choking and blinding. There are fewer internal fire breaks here, fewer sealed compartments to contain the blaze. Ventilation systems, designed for aircraft operations, now feed the flames with fresh oxygen. Attempts to flood magazines are delayed, confused, disrupted by damage to power and communication lines. Akagi is still afloat. Her engines still turn. But control is slipping away. Across the sea, similar scenes unfold aboard Kaga and Soryu. Precision strikes, catastrophic fires. Ships designed to deliver killing blows now struggle simply to breathe. And far away, On American carriers yet untouched, sailors listen to reports crackling over radios. They know what bombs can do. They have trained for it. They do not celebrate yet, because the real test of a warship is not how hard it can strike, but how long it can refuse to die. June 4th, 1942, mid-morning. The burning carriers of the Imperial Japanese Navy slow in the water, their once perfect formations dissolving into chaos. Akagi's helm answers sluggishly now. Smoke pours from shattered elevators and ruptured hangar openings rising in thick, oily columns visible for miles. Below decks, the situation is already beyond doctrine. Lieutenant Commander Takeshi Maeda, an engineering officer on Akagi, fights his way through choking smoke toward a fire main junction. The heat is unbearable. Steel decks glow faintly red beneath his boots. Somewhere nearby, aviation fuel continues to burn, not in controlled pools, but in spreading sheets, flowing downhill through open passageways never meant to be sealed during combat operations. Damage control teams do what they can. Hoses are deployed, but pressure drops quickly as lines rupture and pumps lose power. Valves that should isolate sections of the ship are hard to reach or impossible to close. The hangar deck was designed for efficiency, not survivability. It is a single, massive space, now acting like a furnace. Maeda understands the terrible truth before most others do. This fire cannot be boxed in. It cannot be starved. It can only grow. In Kaga, the situation is worse. Multiple bomb hits have detonated among aircraft being refueled and rearmed. The blast doors between compartments, thin, lightweight, never intended to withstand internal explosions, are twisted open or torn from their frames. Flames leap from one space to another, racing faster than men can run. Captain Jisaku Okada orders counter-flooding to correct the list. Seawater pours into lower compartments, stabilizing the ship, but at a cost. Electrical systems fail. Pumps go silent. Fire suppression efforts collapse into desperate localized struggles. Sailors fight with buckets, with extinguishers, with bare hands and soaked rags. Many never make it out. These are not inexperienced crews, the Imperial Japanese Navy, but their training emphasizes attack, launch cycles, torpedo runs, coordinated strikes. Damage control exists, but it is secondary. There are fewer specialists, fewer redundancies, fewer drills under realistic conditions, and now the price is being paid in minutes. At 10:24 a.m., Sorio shudders under a direct hit that detonates among armed aircraft. The blast is so violent it buckles sections of the flight deck upward. Fires erupt simultaneously on multiple levels. Within 10 minutes, she is a floating torch. Engines stopped, steering gone. Orders are given to abandon ship. Hiryu alone remains operational, for now. On her flight deck, Admiral Tamon Yamaguchi watches the smoke rising from the other carriers. He understands what this means. The offensive doctrine has failed at the moment it was supposed to be decisive, but Hiryu still has teeth. And Japanese naval culture does not retreat easily. Strike aircraft, they will find the American carriers. They will strike back. Hours later, those attacks succeed. Partially. Yorktown is hit. Bombs explode. A torpedo rips into her side. She lists, loses power, falls silent. From a distance, she looks finished. But aboard Yorktown, something different happens. Below the shattered flight deck, damage control parties move with practiced precision. Bulkhead doors slam shut, sealing off flooded compartments. Fire mains are rerouted. Emergency generators hum to life. Men work knee-deep in water, passing tools hand to hand in darkness, lit only by flashlights and emergency lamps. The ship is hurt, but she is still fighting. Within hours, Yorktown's list is corrected. Power is partially restored. Fires are extinguished. By afternoon, she was recovering aircraft. When Japanese reconnaissance reports filter back to Hiryu, officers are confused. The American carrier they believed sunk is moving, alive. This is not supposed to happen. Back aboard the Japanese ships, the contrast is brutal. Akagi's flooding orders come too late. The ship is abandoned by early afternoon. Kaga follows. Soryu is already gone. Steel hulls remain afloat for hours, even longer. But they are dead ships, consumed from the inside out. The sea around them is littered with debris, oil, and men. This is the moment, though few realize it yet, when laughter dies. Not because American carriers are invincible. They are not, but because they are built to endure failure, to survive being hit. to give their crews time. Imperial Japanese doctrine never planned for this moment, never truly believed it would be necessary. As night falls over the Pacific, fires still burn on the wrecks of the First Air Fleet, and far away, American carriers steam on, damaged, shaken, but operational. The difference is no longer theoretical. It is written in smoke, steel, and survival. Night settles over the Pacific like a heavy blanket. The fires aboard Akagi finally begin to dim, not because they have been defeated, but because there is little left to burn. Her hull drifts, blackened and silent, the proud flagship of the First Air Fleet reduced to a floating ruin. Destroyers circle at a distance, their crews watching, helpless as orders are debated and delayed. Shortly after 020 hours on June 5th, scuttling charges are set. Akagi's survivors stand crowded along destroyer rails as explosions tear through their former home. The carrier rolls slowly, almost gracefully, before slipping beneath the surface. The sea closes over her as it has over so many ships before, but this loss feels different. It feels final. In the days that follow, the Imperial Japanese Navy struggles to understand what the official explanations emphasize: surprise, bad luck, and the extraordinary accuracy of American dive bombers. These are all true, but they are not sufficient. Quietly among engineers and junior officers, a more uncomfortable realization spreads. The ships did not die because they were hit. They died because months later, at naval facilities in Kure and Yokosuka, design officers pored over damage reports from Midway and earlier battles. Diagrams show how fires spread unchecked through hangar decks, how ventilation systems became chimneys, how the lack of armored flight decks and internal subdivision allowed a single bomb to trigger cascading explosions. Some of these officers had argued for stronger internal protection before the war. They had lost those arguments to weight limits, speed requirements, and an unwavering faith in offensive supremacy. Now, the cost is undeniable. But doctrine does not change easily, especially in wartime. Japanese carriers completed after Midway incorporated incremental improvements, better firefighting equipment, modest changes in fuel handling procedures. Yet the fundamental design philosophy remains. The ships are still built to strike first and strike hard. Survivability is improved at the margins, not reimagined at the core. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, American carriers limp into Pearl Harbor bearing scars instead of wrecks. Yorktown, towed and patched, enters dry dock. Shipyard workers swarm her hull. Damage reports are brutally honest. This many compartments flooded, this many systems lost, this many men killed. And then, immediately the questions begin. What worked? What failed? What must change? The U.S. Navy treats damage as data. Fire mains are reinforced. Foam firefighting systems are expanded. Training manuals are rewritten based on first-hand experience. Damage control drills become more frequent, more punishing, more realistic. Every sailor, regardless of specialty, is expected to know how to fight fire and flooding. Because American naval doctrine has long accepted an ugly truth: warships will be hit. The question is not whether damage occurs, but whether the ship survives long enough to matter. This difference becomes increasingly visible as the war grinds on. In November 1942, off Guadalcanal, USS Enterprise was struck repeatedly by bombs. Fires rage. Casualties mount. Yet compartment after compartment is sealed. Crews rotate in and out of infernos, exhausting themselves but containing the damage. Enterprise survives. Again. In contrast, Japanese ships continue to suffer catastrophic internal fires when struck. At the Battle of the Philippine Sea in 1944, Taiho, Japan's newest and most advanced carrier, fell victim not to multiple bomb hits, but to a single torpedo. The explosion itself is survivable. The fire that follows is not. Fuel vapors spread through the ship, carried by ventilation systems. A well-intentioned but disastrous attempt to clear the fumes disperses them further. Hours later, a massive internal explosion tears Taiho apart. Once more, the pattern repeats. By now, American pilots and sailors have noticed it too. Japanese carriers, when hit, tend to die fast. American carriers, even when mauled, keep fighting. This is not because American sailors are braver, it is because their ships give them a chance. Back in Japan, some officers privately acknowledge the bitter irony. Before the war, American compartmentalization was dismissed as over-engineering, a sign of industrial excess. a reflection of a navy that expected to absorb punishment rather than deliver decisive blows. Now that excess is keeping ships afloat, the laughter is long gone. What remains is a lesson learned too late. One written not in manuals or lectures but in seawater flooding steel compartments, in men choking on smoke, in ships that refuse to sink. By 1944, the contrast between the two carrier fleets had become impossible to ignore. The Pacific is no longer a testing ground, it is a proving ground. Every major engagement now reinforces the same brutal conclusion. Survivability is not a luxury, it is a combat power. On June 19, 1944, the Philippine Sea stretched wide and clear under a blazing sun. American Task Force 58 moves westward, in layered formations, radar screens glowing in darkened combat information centers. Below deck, damage control teams stand watch as routinely as gun crews man their stations. Helmets are strapped, lash gear laid out, fire mains pressurized before the first enemy aircraft even appear. They expect to be hit. When Japanese strike planes finally arrive, many are shot down long before reaching their targets. But some get through. Bombs fall. Near misses send towering columns of water crashing. Steel shudders. Lights flicker. On USS Bunker Hill, a bomb detonates near the flight deck edge. Shrapnel rips through exposed areas. Fires break out instantly. Within seconds, damage control parties are in motion, closing watertight doors, isolating electrical circuits, flooding compromised aviation fuel lines. Foam blankets smother burning gasoline before it can spread. The ship, what looks almost routine now, would have been extraordinary 2 years earlier. The difference lies not in luck, but in preparation built into steel and drilled into muscle memory. Far across the sea, the remnants of Japan's carrier force attempt to fight on with fewer ships, fewer pilots, and the same underlying design philosophy. Losses mount quickly. When Japanese carriers are hit, fires still race unchecked through hangars. Internal explosions still tear ships apart from within. Damage control efforts, though courageous, are overwhelmed by designs that leave little margin for error. This is not ignorance. By now, Japanese naval engineers understand that, but the solutions require time, resources, and industrial capacity Japan no longer possesses. Heavier armor means slower ships, more compartmentalization means reduced aircraft capacity, and above all, it requires abandoning the belief that victory is decided solely by striking first. The war does not allow for such philosophical revolutions. American carriers, by contrast, grow tougher with every refit. Flight decks are reinforced. Fire suppression systems are expanded. Redundant command centers ensure that even if a bridge is destroyed, the ship can still fight. Survivability becomes a design priority equal to offensive power. This approach reached its grim climax in May 1945, off Okinawa. Kamikaze attacks hammer the U.S. fleet relentlessly. Aircraft slam into decks loaded with fuel and ammunition. Explosions tear open flight decks. Fires rage amid wreckage and burning bodies. USS Franklin is nearly destroyed by a single Japanese bomb that detonates among fueled aircraft. Over 700 men are killed or wounded. Fires spread with terrifying speed, but the compartments are sealed. Magazines are flooded. Crews fight for hours, then days. Franklin does not sink. She makes it home. Each survival sends the same message. Damage control is not passive. For Japanese observers, those few still in positions to observe, the realization is devastating. Their navy did not lack courage, skill, or determination. It lacked forgiveness. Its ships were built to be perfect or to die. The Americans built ships that could be broken and still function. In the end, this difference proves decisive. Not in a single battle, but across dozens. Not in dramatic explosions alone, but in what happens afterward. Whether a ship returns to the fight or disappears beneath the waves. By the war's final months, the Imperial Japanese Navy is a shadow of what it once was. American carrier task forces roam freely, launching strikes with near impunity. Their ships bear scars like badges of endurance. Steel has spoken, doctrine has been judged, and the verdict is written in the carriers that refuse. August 1945. The Pacific is quieter now, not peaceful, but emptied of challenge. American carrier groups move methodically toward the Japanese home islands, their decks crowded with aircraft that no longer face serious opposition. The war has stripped away illusions, leaving only outcomes. In naval headquarters across Japan, officers review the final tallies. 4 fleet carriers lost at Midway, more at Santa Cruz, more in the Philippine Sea. Taiho, Shokaku, Zukaku. Names once spoken with pride now listed in columns of ink, followed by brief explanations that say everything without saying enough. Fires. Internal explosions. Lost control. The same words appear again and again. Among surviving Japanese naval officers, there is no public reckoning. The culture does not permit it. But privately, in memoirs written years later, a different tone emerges. Some recall pre-war exchanges with American counterparts, visits, lectures, observations of shipyards and fleet exercises. They remember seeing thick bulkheads, redundant piping, damage control lockers everywhere. They remember dismissing it. American compartmentalization, they had said, showed a lack of a belief that ships would be hit, a defensive mindset, unworthy of a navy built for decisive battle. What they misunderstood was intent. The United States Navy did not expect to lose. It was expected to endure. By building ships that could survive catastrophic damage, American planners accepted that war was chaos, that no plan, no formation, no doctrine could guarantee immunity. Survival was not an admission of weakness. It was an extension of offense. A carrier that survives a hit can launch again, a fleet that absorbs damage. Over time, that pressure becomes unstoppable. This is the lesson written across the Pacific in steel wreckage and floating survivors. The Imperial Japanese Navy placed its faith in perfection, perfect execution, perfect timing, perfect strikes. When that perfection cracked, there was little beneath it to hold the structure together. American carriers, flawed and battered, kept moving. When the war ends, analysts on both sides reach the same conclusion from different directions. Damage control was not a secondary concern. It was decisive, not glamorous, not dramatic in the way torpedo runs and dive-bombing attacks were, but decisive all the same. In the decades that follow, every modern warships, Japanese ones included, are built with extensive compartmentalization, redundant systems, layered fire suppression. The lessons of Midway, of Okinawa, of Franklin and Enterprise are embedded in blueprints and training manuals. The laughter never returns. What remains is respect for a truth learned the hard way, that a warship's greatest weapon is not always the aircraft on its deck or the guns on its rails. Sometimes it is the ability to burn, flood, bleed, and refuse to sink.